Hey, welcome back to the stash. Daredevil is a character defined by suffering. Matt Murdock has lost more than most heroes ever will, but the thing that makes him different, the thing that makes him Daredevil is that he never stops getting back up. No matter how much the world takes from him, no matter how hard it tries to break him, Matt keeps fighting. But even the strongest men have their limits. With Daredevil Born Again now out, many fans were shocked to see that Foggy Nelson, spoiler alert, is killed in cold blood by Bullseye. But this isn't the first time he's had to face a world without his best friend. There was a time when Matt thought Foggy was gone, murdered while he was powerless to stop it. And in that moment, something inside him shattered. But the truth was more complicated. For this is a story about loss, about being pushed past the edge, and about what happens when hope feels like a lie. About a friendship that was supposed to be over, and about a man who thought he had nothing left, only to realize that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything. And so, continuing our March Without Fear initiative on the channel, I wanted to take an in-depth look at the time Foggy Nelson faked his own death. Before we begin though, I wanted to take a quick second to say that here at The Stash, we're trying to reach 9,000 subscribers before the end of the month. So if you love comics and deep dives like this, consider sticking around and hitting that subscribe button. But anyway, with all that being said, this is the time Foggy Nelson faked his own death. Hell's Kitchen is falling apart. It's like a rabid dog escaped from the pound. Half scared, half psychotic, running wild. Running with the junkies and the mobsters and the killers. Ready to tear the throat right out of the city all over again. Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil's home, has gone to hell. All the while its protector rots in prison. Matt's been fighting to keep his identity secret for a while now. Sure, he denies it, and technically the officials haven't proven anything. But when the government decides you're guilty, it's only a matter of time. He's spent 32 days in Ryker so far, with no end in sight. Foggy Nelson, his lawyer, managed to get him into the protected wing. But it doesn't help. Not much. His heightened senses can't adjust to this place. Even behind 3 feet of solid concrete, it's overwhelming. The stench, the noise, the chaos, all of it. Matt can't sleep. Not for more than 10 minutes at a time. Protected custody isn't any better than general population. The convicts here are just more broken, more scared, more victimized, or so low on the food chain they'd be dead the second they stepped into the yard. But make no mistake, these aren't good people. Even the teenager down the hall, the one who never stops crying, he's a murderer, a drug addict. And the guards? They're no better. Drunk with power, corrupt, or the kind that just look the other way. Mostly though, they're just cold and cruel. Corrections Officer Gruber stops by Matt's cell, taunting him, calling him Daredevil, even after Matt's told him over and over again that he's not. Gruber doesn't care. Instead, he smirks, telling Matt he should check out the latest edition of the Daily Bugle. Matt doesn't bite, just answers flatly, "I'm blind." Gruber sarcastically plays along and tosses the paper by Matt's cell. Matt then asks, does Gruber even realize he hasn't been convicted of anything? That the only reason he's here is because he's awaiting trial. That sets off Gruber. He snaps at Matt, berating him, warning him that he's nothing here, just another nobody who's going to get what's coming to him. Or at least, that's what he heard. Matt tenses. What did he hear? Gruber reveals the word is, Matt Murdock isn't going to make it to trial. And it's not like the feds are in any hurry to schedule one either. Gruber's heartbeat skips like mad whenever he's near Matt. He's terrified of what Matt might be. But he's right about one thing. The feds aren't in any rush to move this case along. Foggy refused to waive Matt's right to a speedy trial, but the government's definition of haste comes from a different dictionary than everyone else's. Poor Foggy, Matt thinks to himself. He's trying so hard to fight this landslide that's become Matt's life. And as the guard leaves, Matt reaches for the paper. His fingers glide over the ink, reading the raised impressions of the text. And then, Matt tenses. Murdock behind bars. Daredevil still free. The headline leaves him in total confusion, and he can only muster a quiet whisper. What the hell? Meanwhile at Nelson and Murdock, Foggy has a visitor, Ben Urich. Ben assures him he's here as a friend, not a reporter. Foggy tells him he's telling the truth. He doesn't know anything about this new Daredevil. Ben says it's pretty convenient. Matt's locked up, waiting to go on trial for being Daredevil, whether that's the actual charge or not. And suddenly someone just happens to catch the man without fear himself on camera. Foggy, he knows how it looks, but he swears he's not trying to poison the jury pool. Ben trying to dig deeper asks, then who is? Because we both know. Foggy cuts him off, saying they shouldn't even be having this conversation. Tensions slowly rise. Urich believes he's here as a friend, but Foggy is always the lawyer. Foggy agrees and says to forgive him if he has any ethical concerns, as well as the welfare of his best friend to think about. Ben presses him, calling him out for crossing the ethic line a long time ago. But Foggy snaps, stating he hasn't. Urich, trying to look at all the angles, says maybe not in the losing your license to practice sense, but assures Foggy he deep down knows he's crossed a line. But the question is, how far is he going to go across it? Ben lists the possibilities. Would Nelson lie in court? Would he put Matt on the stand? Or maybe would he go as far as to get some friend of Matt's to run around the city as Daredevil? Foggy, his face stern, says what they're doing to his partner is wrong. He's not a criminal. Urich, trying to level with Foggy, reminds him his job is about the law, not about justice. Foggy retaliates, declaring his job is about protecting his client. Ben uses it as a chance to go back to his question. If Foggy isn't responsible for this new Daredevil running around, then who is? Who benefits besides his client? Foggy goes to sit back down in his chair, and in a snarky response mentions the Bugle as the one winning in all of this, considering they sold out all over town today. Ben, realizing this is going nowhere, begins to walk out and tells Foggy that anything he finds on his own is fair game. Foggy leans back with another snarky response. I wouldn't expect any less from you. Ben pauses at the door. His voice drops. What the hell is that supposed to mean? He asks. Foggy crosses his arms. You're only a friend when it's convenient, only when it's between the headlines. And with that, silence. Ben doesn't respond. Instead, he steps outside into the pouring rain, unbeknown that a certain devil is watching from the distance. Foggy tries to get back to his paperwork, as difficult as that can be when you have so much on your mind, until something catches his attention. That something being Daredevil. Foggy rushes out onto the rooftop, soaked in rain. Daredevil from behind asks if something's wrong. Foggy quickly turns back, sternly pointing at the figure, saying there's plenty wrong. He already told him he doesn't need him adding to it. For the last thing Nelson needs is someone seeing them two talking together. Daredevil's tone shift, he was just trying to help, but Foggy isn't having any of it. He then clamps his hands over his ears. He doesn't want to hear it, he doesn't want to know, he doesn't want any part of this Daredevil. After a moment, he lowers his hands, his voice is firm, and says, "Are we clear?" Daredevil doesn't answer, he simply turns and disappears into the rainy night. Sometime later at John F. Kennedy International Airport, the FBI director and Warden Cole are in a heated argument. The director isn't asking, he's demanding that Matt Murdock needs to be removed from protected custody. Cole is furious, this is too far. He's been shoved around so many times by the people above his pay grade, but there's nothing he can really do about it. And it's obvious what's happening here. They're setting the stage. Put Murdock in general population, put him and Fist together, and let fate do the rest. Cole pushes back, argues that Murdock is a blind man, but the director doesn't care. It's clear he suspects more. And with that, Matt Murdock's fate is sealed. It's early morning at Nelson and Murdock. Becky enters, greeted by Foggy snoring. Not that it's his fault, the government have been drowning him in paperwork. But he won't let it stop him. No, he's determined to save his best friend, and in the process, kick all their asses. Dakota North enters and doesn't waste any time. She's got bad news. She just received a call from the Bureau. They're challenging Murdock's need to be in protective custody. Foggy can't believe what he's hearing and points out that Matt is blind. But the theory is, if he is Daredevil, he should be able to get along fine in general population. Foggy mentions that they actually haven't proved he's Daredevil yet. But since they made a strong enough case to have him locked up, the odds are clearly stacked against them. And so Foggy, still determined as ever to free his partner, sets out to pay Matt a visit. Meanwhile, Matt's prison life is getting worse by the second. After a quick visit to the infirmary, the guard takes him on a little detour. Matt doesn't resist, doesn't ask any questions, but his radar sense is already telling him everything he needs to know. They're away from civilian eyes, away from surveillance cameras, and beyond the constant roar of prison life. The door swings open. Inside, Hammerhead and a dozen of his men. Hammerhead believes it's time for him to teach Murdock a lesson. He wants Matt to truly understand where he is, because in prison, only one thing matters. That being how far you're willing to go. Matt stays still and asks, for what? Hammerhead doesn't hesitate. His voice is cold as he replies with, survival. And just like that, one of his men smashes the officer in the back of the head. The guard collapses. The rest of them close in, surrounding the man without fear. Hammerhead tells Matt, there's no reason to pretend in this room. There's no guards, no cameras, just him and a dozen criminals ready to rip him to shreds. Murdock warns them they're making a mistake, but Hammerhead smirks, telling him that no, instead, this is a lesson, for the guards will be here in a couple of minutes and either Matt will be dead or he'll have a lot of explaining to do. And so with that, Hammerhead welcomes Daredevil to prison. The first goon lunges, razor blade flashing. Matt blocks, grabs his arm and kicks him hard in the face. The next charges in, but a sharp elbow drops him instantly. More rush, Matt holds off one with brute strength while striking another with a swift kick. And then, like a man possessed, he doesn't stop. A thug's head slams into a clock. Another swings, but Matt dodges with ease, moving with acrobatic precision. He strikes, he flips, he fights like hell. And when the guards finally burst in, all they find is a dozen men out cold. And in the corner, a mild-mannered Matt Murdock, pleading his innocence, insisting it was nothing more than a gang fight, one that he was unlucky enough to be caught in the middle of. Matt already knew how this would end, with him in solitary. Now locked away in a steel box, he sits in the silence, with his mind racing. Why would Hammerhead want him here? He wonders if it's maybe the better place for a trap. A steel door instead of bars? A smaller, more isolated cell? Then he hears footsteps. They get closer and closer. It's another guard, telling him his lawyer is here. Matt sits across from Foggy, telling him about his latest stint in solitary. Foggy isn't happy, but Matt had no choice. It was him or them. Then comes the question. The new Daredevil. Matt asks if it was Foggy's doing. He doesn't hesitate. It wasn't. But still, for the first time in a while, the headlines bring good news. Another Daredevil running around means they have a play for reasonable doubt, and they need it. The feds are pushing hard to get Matt into general population. And Matt knows why. They want him dead, before he can even stand trial. Foggy tries to level him, tries to calm him down, but given everything, it looks so bleak. Even with all the legal loopholes, all the ethical concerns, every path forward just leads to more questions. Foggy leans in, thinking, there has to be a way to keep Matt in protected custody. Matt has a suggestion. Eye doctors. Tell the higher-ups to bring one in, one who can prove he's not blind. They can't put a blind man in general population. Foggy had thought of that, but after today, it's a stretch. Matt stays firm though. They have to just deny it. There's no one willing to say a word about what happened. No witnesses, no proof, but Foggy lowers his head. He hates seeing his partner like this. He lifts his hand, pressing it against the glass barrier. And he swears to Matt, he will do whatever it takes. He will not let them do this to him. Matt smiles. Not the usual smirk, not the mask he wears for everyone else. For it's softer. It's real. And for the first time in a long time, he doesn't feel alone. His hand slowly lifts, pressing it against the glass. As they just sit there. Two best friends, separated by a barrier, but still standing tall together. Their time's up, and so Matt is led back to solitary, while Foggy and Dakota are escorted through the halls, discussing just how bad things have gotten. Matt sits in silence, but something feels off. The air is different. The space around him somehow has changed. His senses pick up something new. It's on the ground. It's a note. Elsewhere, Foggy notices something too. The path they're taking, it's wrong. They were supposed to go straight, but the guard plays it off as a detour due to the pipe burst. Matt's fingers skim the note, tracing the words. Foggy's stomach knots. Matt reads, Foggy follows. And something is very, very wrong. The note leaves a haunting message. Solitary ain't the lesson. The lesson is maybe we can't hurt you, but when you're behind cement walls and iron doors, who can you protect? The guard leads Foggy and Dakota into another room. The second they step inside, the bars slam shut behind him. They're not alone. Several men are waiting. Matt's heart drops. His mind races. It's really happening. One of them backhands Dakota. Foggy yells, demands them to leave her alone, and they plan to. Because she's not the target. Nelson is. Fear fills Foggy's face as he yells for help. Back in Matt's cell, he shuts out everything, straining his radar sense. He must lock in, and he does. He can sense it, he can hear it, every single second of it, but they're running out of time. He yells for the guard and bangs on the door. Foggy is being severely beaten. The guard arrives, but ultimately, Matt's pleas fall on deaf ears. For the guard ignores him and leaves. Desperation sets in. Then, a knife is drawn. Matt hears it. The blade pierces flesh. And Matt knows that sound too well. Foggy has just been stabbed. Foggy is dying. Matt screams for help, begging, pleading, banging against the steel door with everything he has. But it's useless. His best friend is bleeding out, and there's nothing he can do. Anger and grief crash together, filling every inch of him. Each hit against the door is louder, stronger, more vicious. And from across the prison, Wilson Fisk listens, and quietly, he laughs. My name is Ben Urich, and in a year filled with bad days, days where I've had to report on the downfall of a good friend, nights when I've been manipulated into helping with that downfall, mornings of waking up in a cold sweat, Kingpin's eyes staring out of my nightmares at me. A year when the bad days far outweigh the good. I think this may just be the worst one yet. This is what it's come to. Foggy Nelson, stabbed to death in Rikers while visiting his client Matt Murdock, who's being held without bail, pending trial in federal court. The charges? Too many. But at the end of the day, they're about one thing. That Matt is Daredevil. He's been dodging that accusation ever since it leaked to the tabloids. But eventually, all houses of cards collapse. And so this blind man who's had to go through so much in his life, from the murder of his father, battling Jack Murdock, to the loss of nearly every woman he's cared for, the guy who, through it all, has done nothing but keep fighting for Hell's Kitchen, has now had the justice system turned against him, and it cost him everything he had left. It was practically an act of mercy that he was allowed to attend the funeral. While the sheriff's deputies are busy with Power Man and Iron Fist, Foggy's mother, Rosalind Sharp, slips under the radar. But not Matt's. It's uncharacteristic of Miss Sharp to show so much emotion. But funerals aren't normal places, and you never know what you'll see. What I see is a lot of guilt, plenty to go around. Like Dakota North, the private investigator who was with Foggy during the attack. I see the look in her eyes, the same one I see in my own every day. I take one last look at my friend, before he goes back to his cell. And I know that whatever guilt any of us feel, whatever anger, it's nothing compared to what he's going through. And for the first time in a long, long time, I actually fear for him, for what this will do to him. Solitary. I barely even notice when they put me back in. I'm never alone now anyway. But I've finally found something to drown out the constant roar of this hellhole. Foggy screams. I hear his last moments over and over in my head. He was so scared. They're going to pay for that. They think that they know who I am. But they don't. Daredevil has always been me held in check. They never met the real Matt Murdock. The death of Foggy has ruined Matt. His bloody fists slam against the solid brick wall, again and again. He doesn't stop. He can't. In his head, he's back at Fogwell's gym. His father is there. One of memories, a ghost pulled from the wreckage of his mind. Matt's trapped, fighting in every corner of his own head. The rage, the fire, it's all his father's. The same fury Jack Murdock felt when he took punches in the ring, when he broke bones just to pay the rent. It's all in Matt too. It always has been. He just kept it locked away. Real tight. But now, his dad's gone. Karen's gone. Foggy's gone. Everyone's gone. All except himself. For there's just Matt Murdock. Things go from bad to worse fast for everyone. Tensions rise between Urich and J. Jonah Jameson, and Matt and Becky, without even a real chance, lose their appeal, leaving Matt to get thrown into general population. And then things get ugly. The feds have got it in for Matt. I met the man in charge, and I know for a fact it's personal. Some spoiled little bureaucrat with too much power taking down a real hero, someone who saves lives almost every day. It's pathetic. We all know the system is broken, but I never realized exactly how badly until now. Got to give Becky credit. She learned a few things sitting next to Matt back in the day. But the deck is stacked against her. They aren't getting any favors in this court. And it looks like Matt knew that's how it'd be all along. As they're carting him away though, I see something that gives me chills to the bone. Matt smiles. Just a little. Just enough so that I know my worst fears have come to pass. That they're sending him exactly where he wants to be. And the bad days, they've only just begun. Immediately the owl tries to provoke Matt, but Matt moves faster. He doesn't just strike at him, he makes an example of him. All the while he beats him to a bloody pulp. Matt is furious, he's set on finding Foggy's killer, but the owl isn't much help. Days pass, Matt Murdock is untouchable, even the guards fear him. He's torn through anyone foolish enough to stand in his way, and now even the cracks in the system are showing. One of the corrections officers turns on his own, whispering to Matt, the guard who led him to Hammerhead. He's back working today. Matt tracks down the guard and starts his interrogation. But it doesn't take long to realize the truth. He actually thought they just wanted to talk to him. He had no clue about the fight. Matt's radar sense confirms it. He's not lying. And so after finding out where Hammerhead is, he sets off to go pay him a visit. Matt moves fast, donning a makeshift disguise and tearing through anyone in his way until he reaches Hammerhead. There's no hesitation. Murdock strikes first. Hammerhead barrels forward, but Matt is quicker. He leaps over him, delivering a sharp kick to the back, sending Hammerhead crashing into a massive TV screen. The fight rages on. Matt moves like a machine, blocking and countering perfectly. Every attack is calculated, every strike is a vicious hit. Then he targets the right spot. A single, expertly placed blow, and Hammerhead screams. His nerves erupt in pain, his body burning, his eyes feel like they're hot coals in their sockets. It's torture. But through it all, Hammerhead still isn't the man he's after. Days continue to fly by, and still nothing. Even with Wilson Fisk now in general population, it doesn't change a thing. If anything, it only fuels the fire burning inside Matt Murdock. For even in a room packed with convicts, surrounded by chaos and noise, it never really matters. Because for someone like Matt, it always comes down to just two people. Him and Fisk. And then, another familiar face arrives. Frank Castle, the Punisher. He's been keeping up with the headlines, he knows what's been happening. And now, he's here. He surrendered willingly. He wastes no time making his presence known to the criminals surrounding him. Because when a man like Frank Castle walks into a room, people always notice. And for Matt, this visit might just change everything. Soon after, Murdock comes within inches of killing Kingpin. But just like all the others before him, Fisk isn't lying. He's not the one behind Foggy's death. And when his radar sense confirms it, it doesn't bring him relief. It only makes him hate Fisk even more. Kingpin somehow manages to steady Murdock's rage, his voice cold and calculated. He warns Matt of what's coming. A massive riot is brewing, one that will send the entire prison into pure chaos. Fisk has no intention of dying behind these bars, and for now, at least, Matt shares that sentiment. So a silent truce is formed, but it won't last forever. And just like that, today is the day. You don't need heightened senses to know it's going to be bad, but it certainly helps. The air inside Ryker's is charged, thick with tension. The inmates whisper, but Matt doesn't need to strain to hear them. Every conversation, every hushed voice, it's all about the same thing, the riot. But for Matt, things are about to get even worse. For Becky and Mila are here to visit him. The second he realizes, panic surges through his body. They can't be here. Not today. Not in the same place Foggy was killed. His voice rises, raw with desperation. He begs them to leave, demands it, but Mila won't back down. The argument escalates. They go back and forth about Matt's mental state, about Foggy, about everything that's led them to this moment. Mila finally pulls away from the phone, handing it to Becky. But before she leaves, she says something. She tells him to remember, who he truly is, to remember why she loves him. And those words, they bury deep inside of Matt's mind. Becky grabs the phone, her voice filled with guilt. She apologizes. She knows she never should have brought Mila here. Matt steadies himself. It's okay, he tells her, but there's no time for anything else. He urges her to tell him what she found, then to get the hell off this island. Becky makes it quick. They've got a name. Someone who supposedly knows who's been running around as Daredevil on the outside. But right now, that doesn't matter. For Matt's focus shifts, his senses lock onto a conversation happening just across the prison. It's Morgan and Hammerhead. Their voices are low, but not low enough. His muscles tense. He tells Becky to get the guard on the line now. And when he picks up the phone, Matt doesn't waste a second. His words are cold and deliberate. He paints a picture for the man on the other end, a vivid, brutal image of exactly what will happen if he doesn't get Becky and Mila out to safety. So the guard doesn't hesitate and wastes no time making it happen. Meanwhile, Kingpin, still calm and calculated, orders Turk to go pay a certain someone a visit. But we'll get back to that very soon. Back with Matt, his pace is slow. Officer Gruber doesn't like that. He's right in Matt's ear, barking orders, telling him to move, to hurry up. But Matt isn't listening to him. His focus is everywhere else but here. His radar sense hones in on the distant clicks of firearms being locked and loaded, as well as Mila and Becky safely on the ferry heading back to New York City. Relief washes over him, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Matt Murdock smiles. He smiles all the while slamming his elbow backward into Gruber's face. His nose shatters, the officer stumbles, gasping, but Matt isn't done. He follows up with another strike, sending Gruber sprawling to the ground. He doesn't even know just how lucky he got, for all hell has broken loose. The riots erupted in full force. It's pure chaos. Violence, screams, gunfire, the scent of blood, thick in the air. The noise is overwhelming, deafening, but Matt manages, because right now, none of it matters. There's no point in hiding his face anymore. He finds the warden and saves him from 2 convicts. He wastes no time and quickly explains what's going down. Matt warns Warden Cole to find any guards he trusts and get to his security station. Cole asks Murdock where he's going, and Matt, more determined than ever, says to keep a promise. Things are about to somehow get 100 times worse, for under the approval of the Kingpin, Turk frees the restrained Bullseye. The riot rages on, bodies clashing like waves in a violent storm. Matt does what he can, trying to contain the chaos, not add to it. One step at a time, one problem at a time. He finds Melvin Potter, the gladiator, lost in this entire frenzy. Eyes wild, fist clenched, ready to snap at any moment, but with a few words, a firm hand on his shoulder, it's enough. Melvin goes back into his cell, his breathing slows down, and with that done, Matt leaps into the action, and right beside him is Wilson Fisk. 2 men locked in motion, perfectly in sync, yet driven by entirely different forces. This sea of convicts crashes against them, but they don't stand a chance, not against the devil, and not against the king. Bullseye doesn't waste a single second making his presence known by killing Morgan with nothing more than a card. Hammerhead leaps off the level. The pure sight of one like Bullseye is enough to have him running. The Black Tarantula, however, stays and fights. Fisk and Murdock continue their endless fight against all the convicts when suddenly a body drops from above, and with that, Bullseye joins in with them. For Wilson Fisk's plan is all coming together. Meanwhile, the warden pays respect to Daredevil, and he has all the security footage of him in action erased. He always knew he wasn't a criminal. He always knew that Matt Murdock was a hero, and this is his way of repaying him for that, especially for saving his life. Back at the brawl, Murdock, Fisk, and Bullseye make light work of all the convicts, and after all the dust is settled, Matt is pissed at Fisk for getting Bullseye involved. Wilson assures him he's their ticket out, but Matt can't let it go. Miller's words from before echo in his mind, and with that, he throws Bullseye to the ground and begins beating his face in. Bullseye retaliates, kicking Murdock back. The Kingpin yells for Matt to stop. Bullseye, in an attempt to finally be rid of Daredevil, tries to shoot him with a shotgun. But Matt, timing his leap to perfection, dodges the shot, resulting in the bullets piercing through Wilson's knee. Matt quickly grabs the spare gun and cracks Bullseye's jaw with it, with another strike for good measure. Kingpin warns Matt that the two of them aren't done. But Murdock doesn't even flinch, doesn't even hesitate. His reply is cold and final. Yeah, we are. And with that, he turns his back, leaving Fist to simmer in his own fury. Matt walks off and finds just the cell he was looking for, the one accompanied by several dead bodies. He hands Frank the gun, and with one single assumption, the two set out together, with one common goal: to escape. After the warden fixes up the security footage, a totally different picture is painted for the world to see. One of Matt being used as a human hostage to ensure Frank Castle's getaway. In the helicopter, Matt thanks Frank, something he'd never thought he'd ever say. Castle tells him it's not necessary. He understands Matt is hurting a lot right now with good reason. But he assures Murdock he doesn't want to be like him. It's something he must remember. And with that, Daredevil and the Punisher go their separate ways. Daredevil is back, but he still has a lot of work to do. First on the agenda, find out who's the copycat running around in his costume. It's easy for a guy like Matt to find someone. His radar sense within an hour finds his target. He goes to meet him. The two lock eyes. Not a word is said before they leap into battle. The fake Daredevil, whoever he may be, is good, clearly well trained, but nothing beats the original. Then suddenly, the fake Daredevil's fist ignites, glowing with a familiar yellow energy, because the man behind the mask, the one who stepped in for Matt all this time, was none other than Danny Rand, the Iron Fist. Sometime later, after changing into his real costume, Danny explains his situation. A man named Lennox had approached Danny Rand with a request to don the Daredevil suit and patrol the streets in Matt's absence. Iron Fist assumed Lennox was acting on Foggy's behalf, or Foggy himself, and agreed. He even kept a watchful eye on Lennox from the shadows just in case, but no matter how closely he monitored him, nothing ever came up. Soon after, with the help of Urich and North, they uncover a new lead. Their missing lawyer, Elton Lennox, has fled abroad to Monaco, and so Matt doesn't waste any time. With nothing more than a simple disguise, he's already at the airport. I got a lucky break with Warden Cole covering for me, turning on the FBI. But I can't count on luck, not from this point on. They tried to kill me, and they failed. They tried to break me, and maybe even succeeded a bit. Whoever they are, they're going to regret that. And they're going to regret what they did to Foggy. It's a quiet, sunny morning in Philadelphia. A paperboy rides through the neighborhood, tossing the latest edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer onto the doorsteps. One newspaper lands with a soft thud next to the welcome mat. A man steps out, dragging a walker behind him. He leans down, picking up the paper, only for his breath to hitch when he sees the front page. It reads, "Murdock missing after prison riot." His eyes widen, his grip tightens, a pang of sorrow flashes across his face, and all he can muster up is a quiet, "Oh, Matt." Before he can dwell on it further, a voice interrupts from inside the house, calling him to come back, away from any potential prying eyes. Foggy listens, even though it's clear he'd rather not. Then he steps back inside, closing the door on the life he once had. He's now in a new place, a place meant for starting over, a place where Foggy Nelson is meant to assume his new life. And now it's time to uncover the secret life of Foggy Nelson. The night is still. The city sleeps beneath a quiet sky. Ben Urich sits alone, the glow of the television flickering across his face as he watches the late night news. Then his phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning. He hesitates, then answers, but he's met with silence. He tries again to call out. Still nothing. On the other end is Foggy Nelson. He's desperately trying to speak, to tell Urich the truth, to tell him he's still alive, but it's no use. The moment he dialed, the signal was cut, for those protecting him can't take the risk. The agent mentions that Foggy Nelson is in protective custody for a reason, and he doesn't intend to see him get killed on his watch. Foggy, aggravated, points out that who would even know if he died now, since all his real friends and family think he's dead already. The agent tells Foggy to trust him. It's safer this way apparently, but Foggy doesn't see it, not when the FBI have been harassing his best friend for months. The agent states that's not connected with his people, for his only concern is keeping Foggy alive as long as he's a target. Foggy, fed up with the entire situation, asks a target of who, since they don't even know who tried to kill him, but the agent keeps his cards close to his chest. Matt, you have to come back. And soon. I don't know how much more of this I can stand. And the worst part is, I agreed to come here. I was stabbed. I was scared out of my mind, and I said okay. Take me away from all this violence and insanity. I was about to be operated on, scared out of my mind, and now I'm so ashamed. By the time I came out of my post-op sedation, it was a week later, and you were already taking it out on everyone in Rikers. And I was still so afraid, as the nurses got me hobbling into physical therapy. Afraid every time I'd feel my muscles pulling on my stitches. I let them tell me I was doing the right thing, that it was just temporary. I was scared. I was really scared. You wouldn't understand, but you know me, Matt. You know I've never been like you. I'm not a coward, but I'm not very brave. I want to do the right thing. I try, but my hands and feet don't always listen to me. I know you don't hold it against me. I know you've never expected anyone to take the risk you do. And I know you hated that being your best friend put me in harm's way. But when you were around, it was different. The fear wasn't so real. I was still freaked out whenever anything happened. My nerves were a car wreck. But even as I was sweating bullets, I somehow knew I was safe. Because of you. And I know that's insane. I know you can't protect everyone, not even the people you love. But maybe I let myself believe the lie a bit anyway, just to be close to it. But then the truth stabs you in the belly, and it scares you out of your denial. You can't watch out for me all the time, Matt. You couldn't before all this mess with your secret identity. And you certainly couldn't when you were locked behind bars. So I made the wrong decision. I let them push me into it. But I did it, because I was scared. Because I was on the operating table and you weren't here, and now you're running, and it's my fault. You think I'm dead, and you're throwing it all away. Come home, Matt, damn it. So we can fix this. So we can get back to the way things used to be. So I can be safe again. Days blows into weeks for Matt Murdock. As Daredevil, he's travelled abroad, relentless in his pursuit for the truth, chasing every lead, dismantling every barrier. And now, he's finally got his answer. He knows who's behind it all, and it's time for a visit. Moving like a shadow, he cuts through the guards with ruthless efficiency, and then, with a final burst of movement, he forces his way into the room. And inside waiting for him is Vanessa Fisk. She's more frail than ever. But even in her weakened state, her presence looms over everything. He demands answers, but Vanessa remains eerily calm. Her body is frail, draped in shadows, an IV bag trailing beside her, yet her voice carries no remorse. She's different. She's cold, detached, almost like Wilson. Matt, seething with rage, presses her, his voice raw with anger, but Vanessa doesn't flinch. She reminds him of what she's capable of the choices she's made before. She's not bound by morality, not anymore. She's done things Matt can't even begin to understand. Murdock's fists tighten. He saved her life before, protected her, and now this is how she repays him? She scoffs at the sentiment. What joy did it bring her? What did survival get her except more suffering? Maybe, she muses, she would have been better off with the monsters and the madmen in the sewers. Matt can't believe what he's hearing. This woman who once tried to be better than Wilson Fisk is completely gone. And in her place is something else, something much worse. He fights to steady himself, to rein in his anger, and instead focuses on the room, the subtle sounds, the heartbeat, the air shifting around them. And in that moment, he realizes the truth. She's dying. She doesn't even have to try to hide it. A mystery the doctors can't explain, but Vanessa is certain she knows why. She knows exactly what's killing her. Guilt. The weight of her sins. The blood she spilled. The moment she took a life. The moment she killed her own son. Something inside her began to rot, and now she's paying the price. Matt struggles to make sense of it. None of this justifies what she's done. Foggy was innocent. He never hurt anyone. Vanessa doesn't argue exactly, for innocence doesn't matter in this situation. Not in this world, and certainly not in her world. He was his best friend, Matt exclaims. But that's the point, she tells him. Matt can feel himself unraveling. Every word she speaks breaks away at what he thought he knew. But before he can react, the door swings back open. A bodyguard charges in, ready to intervene. Matt moves before the man can even do anything. He grabs his arm and slams him through a table brutally. Glass shatters, furniture splinters, the bodyguard is out cold. And Vanessa barely reacts. Matt, his breath heavy, demands to know why. Why all of this? Why put him through hell? She asks him if he really wants to understand, because to her, this was never about power or money or control. This was a game of revenge. She blamed herself at first, but then she realized the truth. It wasn't her fault at all. It was Matt's and Wilson's, and for so long, they've been locked in this endless war, a cycle of violence, and neither of them could ever truly escape. Vanessa's had enough. If she was doomed to die because of the choices she made, then she would make sure they suffered too. She would set them on a path where there were no good choices, only pain and suffering. Sending him to prison gave him two options: let him be destroyed or chase the trail she left him. Either way, she won. And now she offers him something more: an escape. She has the means to clear his name, to wipe away the federal indictment. She can give him his life back, but there's a price. Wilson Fisk. Matt must become his lawyer, get him out of prison, and use the law to set the kingpin free. Matt recoils at the thought. The very idea of it disgusts him. She's asking him to betray everything he stands for, to turn against his own morality. But then she gives him another option, or rather a warning. She tosses something onto the floor. Photos, evidence of him operating in Europe while another Daredevil prowled the streets of Hell's Kitchen. She has him trapped. Be Matt Murdock again or stay on the run forever. The choice is his. Matt looks at her, this woman who once was so much more. He tells her he's sorry. Not for what he's done, not for refusing, but for what she's become. Because in the end, Wilson Fisk won. Whatever twisted game they started playing, she might be better at it than him. But she's not herself anymore. Matt came here for vengeance, but now there's no point. So she can take her deal and do whatever she wants, because he's not playing. Because for Daredevil, it was never a game. He turns, leaving her behind, disappearing into the night as the snow falls. Vanessa watches him go. The guard wakes up, asking if she expected anything different. But she smirks as she tosses the photos into the fire, letting it burn to ash. Because in the end, she knows that above all else, Matt Murdock is a selfish man. He just doesn't realize it most of the time. The guard asks her about Foggy Nelson, and Vanessa decides to leave it as a final parting gift to Matt, the surprise that his best friend is still alive. The rain pours down relentlessly. Matt is back in New York. Somewhere on the side of an empty road, he stumbles forward. His body is battered, his mind is exhausted. He's been broken, stripped of everything, left to fend for himself in the dark for so long. And finally, just like the plan he made when he stepped foot back into America, a passing van slows down, concerned for the wandering blind man drenched in the storm. And so of course, Matt Murdock accepts their help. He accepts the ticket back home. Back in the city, the world continues to spin. The news cycles blast updates on the scandal that engulfed Matt's life. His name has been dragged through the mud, his reputation has been shattered. But with the truth finally being brought to the surface, his name is ever so slowly being cleared. But one man is still furious. Foggy Nelson. He argues over the phone, pleading and demanding. The truth is out there. Matt Murdock was framed, but the system moves slowly, and Foggy is running out of patience. They still want him to stay in this fake life. But then everything changes. It's a casual day at the office, another coffee break, another news update on the TV. But this time, the words cut through the background noise. Matt Murdock has been found alive. The realization hits Foggy immediately as the coffee pot shatters on the floor. The next day, the world is watching. Cameras surround Matt as he steps forward to address the public. Questions bombard him from every direction. Where was he? What happened? And he explains the best he can. But more questions and more accusations still come his way. Some of it still stings, yes, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because the truth is out, and soon, the charges will be dropped. Finally, inside, Matt finally breathes. The nightmare isn't fully over, but it's no longer suffocating him. Mila, the woman he loves, holds him close, trying to let the pain slip away. Then his radar sense is picking up something impossible. Security tries to stop the man from barging in, but he won't be held back. Not for this, not after everything. Matt turns at the sound of a familiar voice, desperate and annoyed. It's Foggy Nelson. Both their faces light up, there's no hesitation. They collide into an embrace, holding each other like the world could disappear beneath their feet at any moment. These two best friends, these two brothers, finally reunited. The pain, the heartbreak, the fear, it all comes pouring out. They thought they lost each other, but I guess some things, even in a world this cruel, can never be broken.